Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are looking at some Darkwing Blast stuff. I had a Bisstead specific video talking about them. I've made videos about other stuff from Darkwing Blast, but I have not done a SHATRI video specifically dedicated to them post their stuff coming out, and I think they deserve it. They're going to be meta impacting stuff for sure. But yeah, I mean, they don't have a ton of cards. It's only like 6 new cards for this new archetype, and they don't even really function as a pure deck, really. They're more so an engine that we're going to see splashed into a lot of things. In fact, one of the most surprising things to me, not even that surprising, but when I saw deck lists for the last Road of the King update for the OCG's format and decks that were topping, almost every deck, no matter what deck it was splashing in a SHATRI engine, whether it was in the main, in the side, wherever. They were very, very popular because they're just super simple cards that offer you really impactful but also versatile value, going first or going second, and that's what we'll talk about here when we go through the cards. So obviously starting off with Fenrir, they all kind of do the same thing but just slightly different. So they all have that same first effect. If you control no monsters, you can summon them from the hand. Cool. They're all big beaters in their own right also, so you got to respect that. 2400. Cool. And I like that this is you control no monsters, not you control none and your opponent controls some, because that way going first they'd be pretty dead. That way they can still come out first to start your play, even going first. Then secondly, during the main phase, they can all just add you one of their cards. So this one adds any SHATRI monster to your hand. Cool. Just grab another one of these guys. Really cool. It won't be able to come out immediately, but like it's still good to load up for like following turns. And lastly, they'll have like an interruptive effect where if this card declares an attack or your opponent activates any monster effect, anything, hand, field, graveyard, banish, wherever, if they activate a monster effect, you can target a face-up card your opponent controls, banish it face down, just straight up. So you essentially just have like a Draco Berserker kind of card on your field. Immensely powerful. I like this card a lot. Really powerful interruption, gets you a guaranteed follow-up, and he threatens the board as a 2400 beater. Really, really nice card. As you guys can see what I mean when I talk about multiple value, right? This card offers you follow-up with another SHATRI. It's an interruption by itself, so even going first, you just go bloop, drop them on the field, and then do the rest of your play with your actual engine. And this guy has just got you follow up, and he's already an interruption on top of whatever else you set up. Really, really good. Or depending on the deck you're playing, he's a level 7 extender for you as well, which could be useful. So going on to Unicorn, same first effect, right? Summoning for hand if you control nothing. During your main phase, you can add SHATRI spell, and when this card declares an attack or your opponent activates a monster effect, they all trigger on monster effects as well. You can look at your opponent's extra deck and banish one monster from it face down. That is so crazy. What I also love about this is a when effect. So if your opponent tries to like imperm, Veiler, or Ash him when he's activating to search, he can actually chain, which means he won't get negated. He'll be able to resolve before the negation does, which means you still get to look at your opponent's extra deck. You still get to banish one card, which either hurts their grind game, hurts a specific card. Banishing Zeus will probably be a popular thing versus like Sprites if you think that'll be their main way to play going second, which is really powerful. Banishing their one copy of Toad, which they usually play, whatever it is, really, really strong in its own right. This is another one that's really good, especially since the spell is actually quite good as well. Then we move to the third one, definitely the worst one of the three for sure, but obviously it's Ogre. He summons from hand, of course, another big body. He actually has Monarch stats, 28-1000, which is pretty interesting. During your main phase, you can add SHATRI Trap, and then when an attack is declared or your opponent activates a monster effect, excavate the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, and if you do, banish one of them face down and place the rest on top of the deck in the same order. This is fine. This one's by far the most mediocre of the three. Its interruption is not as good. It's not hitting a legitimate resource, or I guess even though the second one doesn't either, hitting something from extra can be way more impactful when you only get to look at the top 5. You don't just get to look at your opponent's deck. But there could be scenarios there. I mean, what if it's a Hulk deck and their number 1 Hulk target is there? Or what if it's a deck that plays Gamma and you're able to hit the driver off of those cards, and just essentially kill those 3 copies of Gamma in their deck? Right? Whatever it is, right? Like there's definitely some application there, but this one's by far the worst. The Trap is the worst card in the archetype, as well as its interruption's the weakest of the 3. So this one's the most irrelevant. But it's still a big 2800 body that jumps on the field and threatens your opponent. So you gotta respect him. And then we get to the extra deck monster, SHATRI Shangri-La. I don't expect this card to come up too often just because, as we saw, The deck can't really put 2 of these on the field super smoothly a lot of the time, but if you get 7s or you're playing another archetype with them that kind of puts 7s, you can make stuff work. This is generic. During the standby phase, special summon Kshatriya Law from deck. That's really good, and this is the standby, so you can actually summon on your opponents when you pass turn on this, and then on yours again, and they're interruptions, so you gotta, they're good. You can only use the effect of this once per turn. Each time an opponent's card is banished face down, like via one of your other Kshatriya Laws, you can choose one unused main monster zone or spell and trap zone. It cannot be used while this monster is face up on the field. This is not once per turn, I think. I think only that first effect is once per turn. So I think you can keep blocking zones and potentially lock your opponent out of the duel, which is pretty cool. And then if this card on the field would be destroyed by battle or card effect, attach a material instead. This is a very defensive card, though, so it doesn't apply a ton of pressure by itself, but it needs to get to some other stuff. But a big booty, and definitely offers you some utility there for sure. And then for the spells and traps, the spell is probably the better one of the two by far. You can normal summon a level 7 monster without tributing, and during your main phase, you can special summon one of your non-Exceed Kshatriya Law monsters that is banished or in grave there. So not only does it allow you to normal summon one of these guys without a tribute, but also you can just straight up special, like Monster Reborn, or I guess more so Will of the Salamangreat, just summon one from hand, banished or grave. And if your opponent activates a spell card or effect and you control a Kshatriya Law monster, you can target 3 cards in your opponent's graveyard, banish them face down. Jesus! So I actually lean towards this card for sure. It is a little dead if you haven't already seen the other Kshatriya Laws, so you have to be careful of that. You don't want to play extra bricks in your deck that if you draw them without the Kshatriya Laws, you're in trouble, but still a pretty good additional card there. And then Prepare. This is by far the weakest card in the archetype. During either player's turn, special summon one of your Kshatriya Laws that is banished or in hand. If your opponent activates a trap or card effect while this card's already face up, and you control a Kshatriya Law, you can look at your opponent's hand and banish one card face down. Super mediocre. Needs to wait for a trap to be activated. No, sir. By far the worst card in the archetype. To me, the spell has some value, and that takes us to where we're at. I mean, as a splashable engine, this is going to be super, super popular. If it's not in the main, it's probably just in the side because it's not quite good enough to be in the main for some people, or maybe it's a space thing, but once they know the matchup, they're like, nope, too good. I got to bring him in which case you will almost assuredly see some combination of Fenrir and Unicorn come in as just really threatening cards. These are the exact kind of cards that I think would threaten something like the Sprite deck. With their big bodies, they jump on the field immediately. Even if they play the Dupe Frog, they already clear the Dupe Frog, and then as you try to push with anything else, you get extra utility, specifically with Fenrir, if they want to try and negate something with a Toad or something, and then they try to reborn it off of the Elf. This card can respond to the Elf and kind of get at least like some sort of punish there, which is pretty good. Right, so, and then Unicorn, grabbing you the spell is just really interesting because it's the only brick you would be playing, but man, the value there is pretty good because you'd be able to like summon him, summon something else, use him as an extender to kind of like continue your plays, and because you search the spell, you then later on just spell reborn him back. And then when your opponent tries to activate a monster effect, you're just ripping something from their extra deck, maybe on their turn, or on your turn, and their turn, depending on if they decide to hand trap you or not. Insane value to be had in this archetype. I just think it's just gonna be a little bit everywhere. You're gonna see decks that have no business playing it, and by no business I mean no legit synergy, but it's just so generically good. It's gonna make weaker engines have additional win conditions and ways to attack the opponent, and that's gonna be too good to pass up on. So it'll probably be somewhat high rarity. I'm curious to see where people go with this, but I'm pretty scared of these guys for sure. It's one thing to have just like generic bomb cards, like your Artemis Slays that are like staple side deck cards. It's another thing to have cards like these that are like legit engines. They get you follow-up, they're interruptions on their own, and they're big. Really, really scary. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Kshatriya Law. I think they're going to warp the format. I think we're going to see them very, very popularly all the time. I think with the introduction of cards like these to the game, I think we can probably see stuff like Dino Wrestler Pankratops come off the ban list, because like Pank can't be summoned turn 1, so he's way more of a brick, so you probably don't even want to main Pank. You actually feel okay maining these. These may just power creep Pank out anyway. which would be pretty interesting. But I'd like it for my decks such as Zephyras, which just lose to stuff like Anti-Spell. So being able to like clear those kind of floodgates would be really, really clutch. But whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, really, really powerful cards, guys. I want to hear your thoughts down below on these. Please let me know in the comment section your thoughts on these cards. Are there any decks in particular that you think make extra good use out of these because of their levels, because of their extension capability, or just your general thoughts on them and how good they'll end up being? I'll take it all. Whatever you got, throw it at me. So I'm out of here for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from your boy down the line. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.